Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I am your host, Brian Scott. Today we're going to talk about a couple simple but powerful subjects that are a part of the law of one literature and the world today, and that is selfishness and hatred. How do we deal with these things in our spiritual quest? How do we resolve them as catalyst? Quo attempts to answer these questions in relation to our own spiritual path. You can find out more information about Quo from our previous episodes. Quo is a principle of higher density beings channeled through LL research, and we've covered a variety of amazing topics. We begin asking for general information on the subject of selfishness. Carla Channeling says, I am Quo. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. It is a joy to meditate with this circle, and we thank this group for calling us to you to share our humble opinion upon the subject of selfishness. Indeed, it is most selfish that we are here, for by our choice of serving you, we find the possibilities of accelerating our own spiritual growth much improved. Thus, we are being selfish as well as unselfish when we speak in groups such as your own. Indeed, the question of selfishness has its root in the question of self. Some concepts are known to you all, that there is one self and that one self is love, and that therefore one is always serving the self. With that said, we may say that in your illusion, each unique portion of the greater self or love moves into incarnation in your lifetime now with a predetermined character and biased way of hearing and perceiving stimulus. That is, each person sees things quite differently. Some have little capacity to register or perceive the difficulties of others besides themselves, and this is perceived as very selfish behavior. It is in fact not selfish behavior, but a constitutional or pre-incarnative way of being. There are others whose selflessness or lack of interest in the self and the things pertaining to the aggrandizement of the self is so marked that these entities are often known as saints, especially those who have died, for that in which they believed, that for which they lived, that for which they received persecution. Between lie the vast majority of souls which inhabit your physical earth sphere at this time. These are entities whose personalities are constitutionally capable either of self-involvement or involvement with others. It then becomes, for the vast majority of entities, a matter of choice as to whether to serve the self by controlling and manipulating others, or to serve the self by serving others. When one serves the self by manipulating others, one is often known as selfish. Another way of gazing at this trait is to see the entity choosing a path of polarization that would be called the left-handed path or the negative path, in which the self is seen as the equivalent of or substitute for the creator. And the constellation of those beings which move about the self are seen as those entities which may or not be of use in some way to the God self which lies within the self. Such entities are not known for the spiritual humility or their lack of confidence in what they feel to be right. All of these hard edges that we described, these overassurances, pomposities, rash assumptions, and manipulations create catalysts for those about them. Catalysts in which they may experience the infringement upon the free will in one way or another, and they then make their own choices as to how to react. They are, in fact, two perfectly acceptable ways to react, one being service to self, one being service to others. Due to the nature of your illusion, it is far easier to react in service to self than it is in service to others. It is not easy to love those who are discriminating against you, causing you difficulty, or creating pain by catalyst in your existence. Consequently, many people there are who inadvertently do polarize by becoming angered by the selfish reactions of another person. It is well to remember that each entity creates its own universe by its reaction to the catalyst it receives. You may choose to create a positive, though challenging, universe faced with just such a relationship. This, however, is certainly a challenge, as it always a challenge to love those, as it says in the holy work, your Bible, who despitefully use you. There is the service to others way to react to the entities about one. One may choose to attempt to be of service. This may seem very selfless and generous. It is interesting to note how very difficult it is truly to be of service to another. Yes, one may please another, but pleasing and serving other selves are two separate processes. In the first place, that which you may think is helpful to another may not be welcomed by that entity. In the second place, that which that entity wishes, you may not be able to perform. In both cases, service to others then seems to be a null option. This logic, as all logic when applied to spiritual reasoning, is fundamentally incorrect. For one's basic service to others and sense of self are the same thing. The way that entities are, that is, the sum total of vibratory patterns generated by the thoughts, actions, and feelings of an entity at a given moment, are the gifts one gives to the Creator and to the world about him. The beingness is the first act of selfishness or unselfishness, of radiance or absorption. When your beingness touches in with the tabernacle of the Most High and a portion of your consciousness remains in that holy place, then all places are holy. All entities are of the Christ consciousness, and the eyes with which you look at those entities are eyes infinite in their ability to channel the one original thought of the infinite Creator. Love. Let us look at one more aspect of selfishness before we leave this instrument. It often concerns those who are highly oriented towards service to others that they continually must spend a large amount of time working upon themselves. This is not selfish, my friends. And do not for a minute think that it is selfish to work upon a relationship with yourself, with the creation about you, and with the Creator who made you. If you are to prepare and discipline your personality so that you may be of the maximum amount of service, a hollowing out process takes place in which the concept of self as you know it now begins to undergo a change. Those things which are of the material world may seem most desirable, those things which are of the invisible world most distant. Yet may we say that your material world is an illusion, known so to your scientists who describe everything as whirling masses of energy, not masses of things, so that dependence upon the reality of anything upon the outside world plane is a jest, although a very convincing one. To move into the true nature is gradually to move away from consensus reality, as it is known by your culture and your society, and to move into an individual and idiosyncratic way of thinking, feeling, and acting, a way in which you interpret your relationship with eternity in the light of your temporary involvement with your own body, as well as the bodies and inextinguishable spirits of other souls, other portions of the Creator with whom you may come in contact. Never begrudge the time it takes to keep yourself as clear as possible of those things which block the energy from the heart, those fears and possessions, being possessed, being trapped, being lost. All the inadequacies and fears that you may have, we ask you gradually to clear those from the conscious mind, to allow them to drift away upon the wind. Needless to say, we urge you to do this through meditation, through affirmation, and through any other process which functions well for you are different and special and not like anyone else. And those things that are true for another may not be so for you. Therefore, the work continues in a lonely and individualized way. Yes, there are companions along the way. Yes, there may be teachers when you need them. But always, it is each seeking soul's choice to follow the self to the higher self, and thus empty out the little self and become as nearly selfless and impersonal as possible when dealing with others with true compassion. Or fill in the self more and more with the little self until the material world becomes quite solid and eternity recedes and is hidden behind a screen of forgetting. We feel that the true selfishness is to choose the path of service to others. And we are not playing with words here. We have found it to be the quicker path, the easier path, and by far the more joyful path. We find the increasing lack of competition to be most satisfying. and the ability ultimately to merge together as one creative, collaborative being, infinitely gratifying. We do not grasp the reasons for the choice of service to self entities, and so we simply say to you, there is that choice, yet it is not what we teach, nor is it what you have chosen. Therefore, we ask that each self free the self from self-accusations of selfishness. We ask each who feels that another is selfish to forgive and cease from judging. For who knows where the selfishness may lie and who must be forgiven in final accounting. How interesting shall it be, my friends, for each of you to gaze back over the pages of this incarnational experience and find how accurate you were in the many, many times you took your spiritual temperature. We assure you, you are too hard upon yourselves. We assure you, your sense of humor will come for you. Thank you again for calling us to you, and we would now transfer that we may answer any questions that you may have at this time. Jim Channeling says, I am Quo and greet each in love and light through this instrument. And this time it is our honor to ask if there are any queries which we may speak to. Is there any query at this time? Yes, I have a question. It regards affirmations and changing your thought processes using affirmations. I've been doing this for the last couple of months pretty regularly. My question to you is, to change a thought process, you affirm what you want to change to, and you affirm that you no longer have a need for whatever blocking or limiting beliefs keep you in what you're thinking now, your limiting patterns now. My question is, when you use affirmations, is the most important thing just faithfulness and repetition, or is it necessary to develop an intensity or kind of a fervor when you do affirmations to make them more effective, or is it just a combination of both? I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother. The field of which you speak is one which is large in scope when applied to personal belief in the behavior and the roots from which they spring. The attempt to change beliefs and the behavior which is associated with such beliefs through the process of reaffirming or reforming that belief in an alternate manner will find success according to a number of factors, including those which you have mentioned. The attempt to change belief that is an integral portion of one's being, having been chosen previous to the incarnation for a specific purpose, will be somewhat less successful than attempting to reform a belief which has been created during the incarnational pattern of existence. Many are the roots of each entity's system of belief, some reaching as far back as the pre-incarnative choice, others taking root in the early years of the incarnation, according to the experiences and the teachings that the entity is exposed to at that time, yet others taking root at a much later portion within the incarnation, having been consciously accepted as a portion of one system of thought and resulting behavior. In general, we might suggest that the attempt to reconfigure the belief patterns through affirmation and the fervor and repetition type of affirmation will be more successful the more recent the belief is which is being reformed. There are within the incarnational pattern various suppositions or beliefs which have to do with the heart or focus. The purpose of the incarnation, these are not so easily reformed, for the power and fervor which formed them in their beginning was not only of the conscious mind, but of the subconscious mind as well. These will yield not so easily to conscious affirmations, but if they yield at all, will need to be worked upon from the level of the subconscious mind, the level at which they are formed. May we speak further fashion, my brother. Well, is there an easy way to tell which is which? I realize through meditation, if you meditate long enough, you'll probably start to know what is what. And maybe I'm answering my own question, but if you could comment on that. I am Quo. The means by which one might ascertain the strength and source of current belief patterns are also various. There are entities who have studied the nature of their own self for a long enough span of your time that they are aware of the parallel patterns that have appeared with the incarnation and are able to pinpoint the beliefs which are formed about these repeating patterns. There is the means of determination, which you have mentioned, that being contemplation, prayer, or meditation, during which there is the opening of the conscious mind to deeper portions of the conscious and of the subconscious minds in order that information may be obtained in some form, whether it be verbal, mental, imagery, or feeling tones, as you may call them. One may also utilize what this instrument would call the blunt instrument, and become aware of increasing difficulty in changing beliefs by affirmation, and make the assumption after a number of attempts have failed that the belief is one which moves from a deeper portion of the being, in which case further attempts may be structured about the use of other tools such as the dreaming process or the hypnosis, in which the entity will attempt to create a door through which it will move into the subconscious mind, and through this movement attempt to discover more of the nature of the belief and the means by which it is affecting the incarnational pattern and the means by which it may be altered during the incarnation. May we speak further, my brother? No, that's fine, thank you. I'm Quo, and we thank you, my brother. Is there another query? Carla says. I have a question sort of along the same lines. I have trouble with my mind ever since 1984 when Don Elkins died. It brings up thoughts that I don't like to have there, and using my mind to control my mind is a joke because the mind isn't working right in the first place. Or I wouldn't be making myself miserable with these images and so forth, and I find myself doing it even in this day. The images have changed somewhat, At this point, I probably have as much frustration because I can't do as much as I used to be able to do because I didn't do everything I wish I could have done for Dawn. But the basic principle is the same. I don't seem to be able to have control of certain emotional states that hit me. And I wonder, this is obviously subconscious stuff that is coming up through the conscious, and that is creating a situation in which affirmations are not going to work and prayer is not going to work. What works? Is there anything that works? Or is it just time the only thing that works? I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my sister. Though time is the great healer of all distortion, there are instances in which the seeker, for reasons of its own welfare and comfort, must look to other means by which healing may be achieved. In your experience, we find there is a great deal of complexity within the patterns which have formed to create the current condition which you experience, as the whirlwind of the mind, which brings the pattern of weather across your field of experience, seemingly unbidden, working its way as it will, leaving it as it will. As we see that the use of hypnosis and trance is not indicated due to previous experience, which has potentiated possibilities which are undesirable, we may suggest that the utilization of your dreams, by that means by which you may be able to find the release in a controlled fashion of the great whirling energy which moves within your mind complex at this time. The attempts to work with one subconscious mind via the medium of the dream and the conscious analysis of the dreams as they are experienced and recorded is a technique which offers the subconscious mind a safe place in which to release portions of experience in a symbolic form. We move to a channeling from October 9th, 1988. Quo is asked, we've been asked to speak to you this evening about hatred. I am Quo, and we apologize for the slow transmission that we are working at deeper levels of the conscious but trance-like state, as this instrument has requested information which makes this state appropriate due to this instrument's own synchronistic queries. Before we begin, we'd like to answer a question we find heavy upon this instrument's mind. This instrument has been wondering ever since the last time the beloved entity known as Aaron was part of the circle of seeking why we were able to offer material of a high intellectual content. Firstly, the one known as Aaron is most intelligent and will pick those truths off which he has the need in a simplistic way. There is much of what you call your time of subtleties. Secondly, this entity is an humble entity, one which is grateful to sit in a circle of beloved entities and enjoy their company. Therefore, this entity is a very strong battery within the circle and does not expect to understand each word, but is very pleased to be with each. This unconditional love offers the highest vibration within your group at this time. Never estimate an entity's worth by age or accomplishment by the ability for unconditional love. We've been asked to speak to you this evening about hatred, because this is a channel had also wished to ask a related question. We find this deeper state necessary and will continue to be attempting to preserve the depth of this contact. Please pardon any pauses. That which is hatred and that which is anger and all of those emotions which may be called negative are distortions of love. They manifest through the distorted individual by blocking energy and trapping this energy in the center involved in the changing, confusing difficulty which is catalyst for distorted love. This catalyst may be extreme, however, may we say that which the questioner considers hatred, it does not know in full intensity, for it is incapable of achieving the purity of negative emotion which would be necessary for those which wish to polarize negatively. Nevertheless, we in no way disregard or lessen any of those emotions which are beyond the control of the entity at this time. When an entity is extremely positive, as each within this circle is, that which may be seen by others to be unimportant or non-catalytic, upon the contrary, sensitive entities which seek will certainly use this catalyst and experience painfully negative emotions. Thus, hatred is love, which has been hurt badly. Anger is that which comes of hatred. Beneath the hatred is what this instrument would call the orange ray blockage. This is especially painful when the entity who is in pain has some difficulty in experiencing self-worth and self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, and self-love. The one which loves the self has the most undistorted energy available to manifest in love in an undistorted form of intimate others which offer negative catalyst, shall we say for the sake of brevity, though this is not the exact description. Beneath both of these concepts is the concept of separation, the illusion in general made up of many seemingly other selves separate from the self is most powerful. Thusly, it is possible to see each entity as unique. However, the veil has dropped betwixt the waking vision and the evidence that each is also the creator, each perfect and all one with each other and one with the original thought of love, which is the creator. We are aware that each has chosen the path of unity, peace, the love of neighbor, the hope for peace within all nations, all hearts, and all peoples, and above all the seeking of the one infinite creator. Those who wish to ameliorate the negative emotions they feel, action is necessary. The first action one may take is to outlast the length of time one is capable of feeling the same catalyst. This is, as the instrument would say, an easy way out, in that no effort must be expended, but merely existence prolonged. However, we are aware that each wishes to move as quickly as possible along the pilgrim's path towards the mysterious face of truth. Thus, we would give you harder ways to work upon the distortions of love, which are the result of blockages which keep energy from moving through the lower energies into the heart energy of unconditional love, which the one known as Aaron has such a great deal of. Each of you has buried within an unconditional love. In each case, this unconditional love withstood many trials, but ultimately the illusion made its mark, and each of you has separated the self from the other self to the extent that the unity of all is not reflected in the relationship which is under consideration in each case. In each case, the difficulty which is, shall we say, the proximate cause of separation is that which paradoxically seems to unite, that is the rite of marriage. To those which find they need change nothing of their relationship in order to live in a married fashion, the catalyst which is negative will be minimal. To those whose expectations are raised by marriage or who have in some way separated themselves from their true selves during marriage, they will find that unifying ceremony has instead placed great pressure upon the entity which creates the illusion of separation. We would now say a word about marriage. This instrument has been reading the work of your author, Joseph Campbell, and we find within the instrument's mind the concept which is consistent with his theory that myth explains the truer nature of mankind. The phrase is, marriage is an ordeal. It is through the great sacrifice of both entities that a marriage becomes a spiritual reality. The gestation of this primal and cornerstone unity is that consideration which you may call deep love or deep friendship or deep commitment. The unmarried who have these feelings do not have as many raised expectations of change as do those who choose the married state. There is indeed much sacrifice in creating the first social memory complex. To be together is the nature of the density which you enjoy. The lessons are only partially those of aloneness and solitude. Much necessary catalyst awaits the seeker within the illusions of relationship. Thus we would say to those present, especially the instrument itself, which is at this time married, to ever lower the expectations of another self, to remember the desire for the truth, and to remember also the desire to be a positively oriented being. Now this is to say that without minimizing the effects of negative catalysts, the self-forgiven and self-loving self will stand upon its own 2 feet and consider not judgment of any other, but the most helpful way to respond. If there is no blockage within the feelings and thoughts, expectations, and hopes within the entity, the energy shall flow through to the heart chakra, and the negative catalyst will fade slowly or quickly. The effort this takes is the utmost an entity can take. And when the utmost is not enough, when the entity which seeks fails to love without distortion, the entity must immediately begin to forgive the other, the self, the situation, and the illusion. The illusion is designed as an ordeal, indeed a series of ordeals within which again and again each soul chooses the positive path of unity, peace, joy, love, and light, or the negative path of discord, despair, hatred, and darkness. When the periods of darkness strike without warning, they are needed, for each entity has all of the varieties of humanity within the self. The most positive entity can be negative. The most negative can be positive. This illusion fools each as it ought, and it must. In the end, we must move towards meditation as our primary suggestion for acquainting the self more and more with an undistorted love, a light which does not fail. In short, we recommend the daily meditation, the reading of thought-provoking or inspirational material, the contemplation upon that material, and the attendant praise and thanksgiving for the moment of consciousness. All of these are but the frosting upon the cake of silence, for as one dwells within the green cathedral of the forest or mountaintop's bleak aspect, or the splendorous church, waiting in what feels to be holy silence for the service of group worship to begin, one is entering the silence within as well as sharing the silence without. Within there lie infinite spaces, for within lies all that there is. Each of you has two basic parts. One part is that of the Creator, that of undistorted love, and to the body, to each cell, is given this awareness. In moving and knowing the body, an avenue into an excellently unblocked state of consciousness is encouraged. Therefore, if the entity is not able to meditate, it may walk about within the creation of the Father, for as this entity sings in its head, "I walk in the garden alone when the dew is still on the roses," this image was given to you by the teacher and Christ known to you as Jesus. Think of your inner space as the garden, and realize that it is your deepest desire not to be loved, not to be understood, but as this instrument's favorite prayer gives, to understand and to love. For each of you is a radiant being. Each of you has strayed from the concept of unity due to perfectly understandable catalyst. It is time to forgive. Remember always that the negative emotion is that which is as real as the positive emotion, in that it creates the electrical atmosphere of certain of your higher bodies and therefore affects your health and your experience within the illusion. Those upon the pilgrim's way need these obstacles not, and we are aware that each has sincerely tried to remove them. We may suggest only what this instrument would call prayer and silence. Each moves in change at all times. Change is painful. Those which have not together pulled to form that which can be termed an us must eventually separate in mind, if not in the physical or chemical form. We have no discouragement for each. It is not right or wrong to act, to think, or to feel. It is in addition well to express the self honestly. The key to unity with others remains a responsibility of unity within the self, so that the self is a true manifestation of what the self has faith in and lives for. If that which is done in relationships manifests the love and the light of the Infinite One, there can be no more beautiful gift to the relationship, to the other self, and to the Creator. When one loves the self, one loves the Creator. When one loves the self through one's own perception of self-failure, or regains this love of self and moves once again in quiet confidence, this one will find the heart chakra unblocked and the positive energy able to be manifested. When there is an excess of sensitivity and feeling in a seeking entity, it is then that the difficulties of the illusion are most poignant. We can only urge your thoughts, insofar as you are able, towards either a higher and better cause or towards innocent distraction, which enables the self to regroup. If the negative emotion is called by the other self in a persistent way, we suggest for the sake of the seeking entity that it express the self insofar as it is deemed necessary for survival. Beyond this, the responsibility lies from self to self. In enlarging and purifying the point of view, each other self is the Creator. Each other person is truly a mirror of yourself. Those hatreds, those distortions of love, which the seeking soul feels for another, are only reflections of the feeling for the self. Thus, it is the self which must be turned to in forgiveness and total compassion. That which is beautiful, it says within your holy works, that which is good, that which is excellent, that which is of virtue, love, and joy, do. These are the words of simplistic advice, yet we say to you that your thoughts are those things which people populate indeed your consciousness, and indeed move your destiny. Attempt therefore to seek the Creator, to feel the oneness of love and light, to carry that flame within you, which has been lit into each and every relationship and situation you might possibly achieve in this way. You are of maximum service to the self as a creature or child of the Creator, to the other self as the Creator. And finally, turning at last from the illusion, the choice having been made, to the Creator itself, to the great mystery which draws us all ever forward in love and light. There is time enough, as this instrument would put it, in further densities to refine the lessons which follow the choice of the positive path. Each of you is a wanderer. Each couple has been asked about is already aware that it is of a different level of density than the mate. This creates certain problems of communication. The thinking is quite different from density to density as the lessons change. Tolerance of the irremediable differences is learned only through the Creator within the self, not from the self which moves through the illusion in a wounded fashion one way or another. May you each choose to love and to understand. This giving without expectation shall place a call within the universe for its balance, and to one who loves much shall much love be given. We ask each to live each day as if it were the last, to be as impeccable warriors of peace, of inner and outer peace, as possible, to pick the self up it may fall, and to tabernacle with the one infinite Creator by going into the silence within. These are your tools. Remember the breastplate of righteousness within your Bible and all the other armor of love. My friends, it is true, love is its own armor. Those about whom you have distorted emotions are. Light and love of the Creator at what this instrument would call the lower energy centers. Let not these things be a stumbling block before your search for unconditional love, any longer than necessary. The first order of business is forgiveness of self. Do not attempt forgiveness beyond the self at first, but only work upon the self. We find that each expresses its positive aspect, so we need not encourage this aspect of behavior. We do not encourage false behavior. We find each to be, by nature, friendly towards other entities and compassionate. Exercise your nature in this regard whenever you can, giving each passing stranger into whose eyes you smile a smile a bit longer, a bit wider, and from the heart. You will never know how many lives you touch by the gentle word, the kindly gesture, the gentle smile. This aspect of the approach to living in a positive or service to others oriented way is the completion of what we have to offer through this instrument. And so, with many thanks to you for calling us to your group, and as usual, with our warning that we are not authorities but pilgrims, which have walked perhaps further along the path than you, we would transfer the one known as Jim for the closing of this session. Carla then asks, well, that does prompt a question. When somebody like Aaron goes to sleep, does it drag down the energy like it does if an adult goes to sleep? I am quo. It is indeed well if each within the circle of seeking remains in the conscious meditative state, for in this manner the vital energy with each provides the circle may provide it as a function of the waking conscious will, which is somewhat blunted or blocked when the entity moves into those deeper levels of meditation and then into the sleeping state. The provision of the vital energy from such sleeping states is only of a residual nature then, and as there is some necessity for the circle to provide a vitality to the one now sleeping, thus is the circle in that degree depleted. Carla then asks, so it weakens the contact, but it doesn't kill it. Does it detune it? I am quo. And though the contact is somewhat weakened in either intensity or duration, the contact is able to proceed without stopping or without being detuned, as you have used the term. Carla says, thank you, quo. Do we have any more questions or further queries? No, thank you. I am quo, and we are most grateful to each within this circle of seeking for inviting our presence. We rejoice with each desire to further refine the expression of the one Creator which moves through each and which is unique to each, which is tested within each life pattern in order that it might be made pure and fine and strong and ever present as a manifestation and glorification of the one Creator. We are known to you as those of Quo, and at this time we shall take our leave of this instrument and this group, leaving each as always in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Adonai, my friends. Adonai. So these two channelings, while basic and simple, carry a lot of amazing information and knowledge that we can utilize. One thing is not to judge others that are being selfish. That's kind of hard for me to do sometimes. I see people being obviously selfish, and I become judgmental. And they're saying don't become judgmental of those others. And that being of service to others is selfish. Whatever path you choose is selfish, but it's selfish in a different way. And we can overcome some of the selfish tendencies by being of service to others, and that moves us away from the distortion of selfishness that they're talking about. If you'll notice, when they talk about hatred, a lot of that discussion is not necessarily about hatred, but about forgiveness of the self. That forgiveness of the self is the key element to overcoming or dealing with hatreds that are existent, understanding that each of us are the same Creator. I did find their discussion of affirmations quite interesting. I don't think that we've talked about affirmations through Quo before, and the idea is that it does work, it can work, but there are some beliefs that we hold that are pre-incarnational, meaning that we chose to believe that we are poor as a pre-incarnational belief, and we can say a million affirmations, but it won't change it. We have some beliefs that we gave ourselves as crutches, I guess, that we can't overcome. Now, I believe there's ways we can change our pre-incarnational instructions, but they maybe require somewhat different attempts, techniques of understanding our dreams or hypnosis. And I would love to know if anybody has come to terms with pre-incarnational instructions that they have chosen to change, because this may be the reason that many people struggle with affirmations. They have beliefs so deep, they come before they were ever born. In any case, I'd love to get your opinions and questions on hatred and selfishness and the other discussions that are in these two channelings. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. I'm sending all the love and light to everyone that's listening, hoping you're having a joyous and wonderful day. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.